Number 1. 7-year-old Garnell was last seen in Baltimore, Maryland, in August of 2002. He was residing with his aunt, Belinda Cash. One of Garnell's great aunts, Trina Morton, who was 9 months pregnant at the time, recalls seeing him playing outside of Belinda's home. Trina made arrangements for Garnell to visit him the next weekend, but she went into labor and couldn't see him, and asked Belinda if she could reschedule the visit. But Belinda told her that it was an inconvenient time because she was in the process of moving. Garnell has not been heard or seen since. Garnell's parents had never raised him. His mother is incarcerated and his father leads a transient lifestyle. During his early years, Garnell lived with his parental relatives in the 3700 block of Harlem Avenue, located on the west side of Baltimore. Belinda, who was childless, took Garnell into her home when he was only 6 years old. The living arrangement was informal, and Belinda had never had legal custody of him. Garnell was never enrolled in school and had never came into any contact with social service agencies. Garnell's relatives didn't realize that he had disappeared until June of 2005 when they found Belinda and asked where Garnell was. Belinda said that Garnell was away on a school field trip to Virginia, but school wasn't in session at the time, and he wasn't even an enrolled student. Garnell's family contacted authorities, who interviewed Belinda, who stated that she no longer wanted to care for Garnell anymore, so she left him on the steps of a social services building in the 500 block of North Hilton Street near Edmondson Avenue located in West Baltimore. But during the police investigation, authorities discovered the address that Belinda gave them wasn't even real. They searched the residence where Belinda resided in 2002 to see if Garnell was left behind there, but they didn't find any evidence as to his whereabouts. Belinda has no known history of child abuse and no significant criminal record. The circumstances surrounding Garnell's disappearance is considered murky, but authorities don't believe that he has met with any harm. Number 2. Hinterkaifeck. Hinterkaifeck was a small farmstead situated between two small Bavarian towns, north of Munich. On the evening of March 31st, 1922, the 6 inhabitants of the farm were killed with a mattock. The 6 victims were the farmer Andreas Gruber, 63, his wife Kazilia, 72, their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabriel, 35, and Victoria's children, Kazilia, 7, and Joseph, 2, along with their maid. A few days prior to the crime, Farmer Andreas told the neighbors about discovering footprints in the snow leading from the edge of the forest right to the farm, but none leading back. He also spoke about hearing footsteps up in the attic and also finding an unfamiliar newspaper on the farm. Furthermore, the house keys went missing several days before the murders. None of this was reported to the police prior to the attack. 6 months earlier, the previous maid had left the farm, claiming that it was haunted. The new maid, Maria, had arrived on the farm the day of the attack and was killed only a few hours later. Exactly what happened on that Friday evening cannot be said for certain, but it is believed that the older couple, as well as the daughter Victoria and her daughter Kazelia, were all lured into the barn, one by one, where they were killed, by the perpetrator or perpetrators. And then when they went into the house, where they killed the 2-year-old Joseph, who was sleeping in his cot in his mother's bedroom. Maria, while asleep in her bedchamber. On the following Tuesday, April 4th, neighbors came to the farmstead because none of its inhabitants had been seen for a few days. The postman had noticed the post from the previous Saturday was still there where he'd left it. Furthermore, young Kazelia had neither turned up for school on Monday, nor she had been there on Saturday. The police first suspected the motive to be robbery, and interrogated several inhabitants from the surrounding villages, as well as traveling craftsmen and vagrants. The robbery theory was, however, abandoned when a large amount of money was found in the house. It is believed that the perpetrator or perpetrators remained at the farm for several days. Someone had fed the cattle, eaten the food in the kitchen, and the neighbors saw smoke coming from the chimney during the weekend, and anyone looking for money would have found it. The death of Karl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, who had been reported killed in the French trenches in World War I, was called into question. His body had never been found. Despite this, most of the fellow soldiers reported seeing him die, and their reports were believed by police. The day after the discovery of the bodies, court physician Jonan Baptist Amelier performed the autopsies in the barn. It was established that a mattock was the most likely murder weapon, and that the younger Kazelia had been alive for several hours after the assault, laying in the straw, next to the bodies of her grandparents and her mother. She had torn her hair out in tufts. The corpses were beheaded, and the skulls were sent to Munich, where they were examined, to find nothing. It's absolutely terrifying to think that a person or people hid in this family's home and waited, got a newspaper, and basically lived there until killing them and taking over their house for a few days after. Number 3. Ricky McCormick. McCormick was a high school dropout who had held multiple addresses in the Missouri-Illinois regions of St. Louis, Belleville, and Fairview Heights, sometimes living on and off with his elderly mother. According to a 1999 article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, McCormick suffered from chronic heart and lung problems. He was not married, but had fathered at least 4 children. He had a criminal record and had previously served 11 months of a 3-year sentence for statutory rape. At the time of his death, he was 41 years old, unemployed, and on disability. McCormick's body was found on June 30th, 1999, near a West Alton, Missouri cornfield by a woman driving along a field road off of Route 367. The reason he was 15 miles away from his current address is another mystery, as he did not own a car and the area is not served by public transportation. Though the body had already been somewhat decomposed, authorities used fingerprints to identify that it was McCormick. There was no indication that anyone had motive to kill McCormick, and no one had reported seeing him missing, so the authorities initially ruled out homicide. But no cause of death was officially determined at the time. McCormick was last seen alive 5 days earlier, on June 25th, 1999, getting a checkup at a St. Louis's hospital. 12 years later, FBI listed the death as a murder and posted a notice for help on the main page of their website. Investigators found 2 notes in McCormick's pants pockets and believe they were written 3 days before his death. The 2 notes are written in an unknown code consisting of a jumble of letters and numbers occasionally set off with parentheses, and are believed by the FBI to possibly lead to those responsible for the killing. Dan Olson, chief of the FBI's Cryptanalysis and Racketeering Records Unit, said, illustrating the significance of the note, breaking the code could reveal the victim's whereabouts before his death and could lead to the solution of a homicide. Attempts by both the FBI Cryptanalysis and Racketeering Records Unit and the American Cryptogram Association failed to decipher their meaning, and Ricky McCormick's encrypted notes are currently listed as one of the CRRU's top unsolved cases, with McCormick killer yet to be identified. According to members of McCormick's family, Ricky had used encrypted notes since he was a boy, but apparently no one in his family knows how to decipher the codes either. But McCormick's family later changed their story, saying that they never knew Ricky to write in code. They say that he only told investigators that he sometimes jotted down nonsense that he called writing, and that they seriously questioned McCormick's capacity to craft notes that they found in his pockets. His mother, Frankie Sparks, said the only thing he could really write was his name. He didn't write in no code. His father, Charles McCormick, said, Ricky can't spell anything, just scribble. It was also noted that although other contents of the victim's pocket were revealed to the family members, they knew nothing about the notes until the local evening news broadcast report on the codes, 12 years later. Number 4. The Long Island Serial Killer, also known as a Craigslist serial killer. The Long Island serial killer is an unidentified suspected serial killer who is believed to have murdered 10 to 16 people associated with the sex trade over a period of nearly 20 years and dumped their bodies along the Ocean Parkway near the remote Long Island, New York beach towns of Gligo Beach and Oak Beach in Suffolk County. The remains of 4 victims were found in December 2010, while 6 more sets of remains were found in March and April 2011. Police believe that the latest sets of remains predate the 4 bodies that were found in December 2010. Police were initially searching for a Shannon Gilbert, a 24-year-old woman from New Jersey, who was working as an escort and reported missing on May 1st, 2010. She was last seen in the area after she ran from, rather than to, her driver, Michael Pack, who was waiting for her outside a client's house in nearby Oak Beach. In December 2010, a police officer and his dog, on a routine training exercise, discovered the first body, the skeletal remains of a woman in a nearly disintegrated burlap sack. The discovery of this led to 3 more bodies being found 2 days later in the same area, on the north side of Ocean Parkway. Suffolk County Police Commissioner Richard Dormer said, 4 bodies found in the same location pretty much speaks for itself. It's more than a coincidence. We could have ourselves a serial killer. A few months later, in March and early April 2011, four more bodies were discovered in an area just off the parkway. Suffolk police expanded the search area up to Nassau County border, looking for more victims. On April 6, 2011, local media reported that an additional set of partial human remains was found, as well as a separate skull, bringing the potential total number of victims found since December to 10. Then on April 22, 2011, two human teeth were found about a foot from the skull. On June 16, 2011, Suffolk County Police raised the reward from $5,000 to $25,000, the largest ever offered in the county's history. Then, finally, on December 13, 2011, the remains of Shannon Gilbert were found in a marsh about half a mile from where she had disappeared, and a week after, some of her clothes and belongings were found in the vicinity. Police believe that Shannon accidentally drowned after stumbling into a swamp, a view not shared by her mother. She had last been seen banging on a resident's door and screaming for help before running off into the night. A panicked 911 call from Gilbert that night revealed her saying that they were going to kill her. The killer is still unknown. It has been suggested that the serial killer is most likely a white male in his mid-20s to mid-40s who is very familiar with the south shore of Long Island and has access to burlap sacks, which he uses to contain the bodies. He may have detailed knowledge of law enforcement techniques and perhaps even ties into law enforcement, which is why he has gone so long without being detected. Some have speculated that the serial killer of former Long Island resident Joel Rifkin may have been responsible for some of the older remains found in March and April 2011. But it is all still a mystery and all unsure. Number 5. The Bear Brook Murders, also referred to as the Allistown Four, are four unidentified female murder victims discovered in 1985 and 2000 at Bear Brook State Park in Allenstown, New Hampshire. November 10th, 1985, a hunter found a 55-gallon metal drum near the site of a burned-down store. Inside were the bodies of an adult female and a young girl. The remains had been wrapped in plastic, possibly a garbage bag. Autopsies determined that both had died of blunt trauma. They were later buried in the same grave. May 19, 2000, the remains of two young girls were found in the first discovery site. The bodies were also in a 55-gallon metal drum. The cause of death for these children has not been released. At least 10 possible identities for the victims have been ruled out. Hundreds of leads have been followed, but nothing has resulted in the identification of the killer or the victims. However, in January of 2017, only last month, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children announced that Robert Evans was identified as the father of the middle child, who is not related to the rest of the victims. They elaborated by explaining that they believed that they had their offender, yet they had yet to identify any of the victims or the middle child's mother. Evans died in prison in 2010, leaving this case and our minds wondering.